True. Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirate lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Chill drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.
What if I told you that for many African societies, the concept of the future doesn't exist, and that instead of time moving forwards, time actually moves backwards? This was the work of John Mbiti, one of Kenya's and Africa's greatest philosophers, and in 1969, he wrote something that completely reimagines the way we think of African time. Mbiti says time is a two-dimensional phenomenon with a long past, vibrant present, and virtually no future. Using Swahili words, he describes the two dimensions of time. The first one being sasa, the now, the recent past, and the immediate future which can be experienced. The second dimension is zamani. Zamani is the vast, endless past where all events eventually go on to live forever. But the future in African thought, it barely exists because time is made up of events. Time has to be experienced in order to be real. So because we can't conceptualize events tied to the distant future because they haven't been experienced yet, then therefore the future cannot constitute part of time. And this is why, according to Mbiti, African languages, at least the East African Bantu languages that he studied, don't have a word to describe the distant future. In African time, according to Mbiti, events create time. Seasons, ceremonies, a conversation, those moments produce time, and people produce as much time as they need. An example that Mbiti uses from the communities that he studied is that a year is measured based on 4 seasons, 2 dry seasons, 2 wet seasons. So a year is only over when those 4 seasons have taken place. So a year could take 365 days, 390 days. It doesn't matter the number of days in a year. What matters is that the 4 seasons have taken place. And this is in contrast to the Western view towards time, where time is a commodity, something that can be spent, saved, wasted, or lost. And according to Mbiti, this is why if foreigners come to Africa and they see people sitting under a tree, they would remark that, okay, why are these people wasting so much time? But in African thought, that sitting under a tree, it's not wasting time. It's either waiting for time or producing time. For me, I think this Western idea of time as a commodity is what drives this Western obsession of progress, development, and some promised future. And this difference shapes everything from politics, economics, to how we live our daily lives. Because in African thought, the golden age isn't in the future, it's actually in the zamani. According to Mbiti, the future is only a shadow until it comes to the present, and then it flows into the zamani. So in that way, time moves backwards. We are not the ones who move forward into time. So of course Mbiti wrote this from a theological point of view because he was trying to explain the nature of African religion. But my main takeaway from the parts of the book that I've read is that unlike Western cultures and religions with end of the world myths, African time has no end. Seasons, years, birth, marriage, death, it's all a cycle. Asante kwa kutazama, tafakari hayo, and I'll see you in the next video.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man? Bro, I'm out, man.
John Mbiti's 1969 idea gets misread a lot, that African time, and this is just based on the African communities that he studied, specifically in this book, 2 East African Bantu communities, that time is made up of 2 dimensions, a long past, vibrant present, and virtually no future. But what did he actually mean? Firstly, Mbiti was a theologian. He was studying African religions comparatively to Christianity or Islam, which emphasize meaning in a distant heaven to be hoped for or hell to be feared. Comparatively, he found that the African communities that he studied ground meaning in the here and now, in lived experience, in memory, and in community. So Mbiti describes the 2 dimensions of time, the first one being sasa, the now and the near future, which we can actually anticipate, and the second dimension being zamani, the vast, endless past where all events eventually go on to settle. So time only becomes real when events happen. Then it moves from the sasa into the zamani. So virtually no future doesn't mean no planning. We absolutely plan. We prepare land, we store food, we arrange inheritance, we dream, and we aspire. The point is, planning is event-based and it's communal. It's not an abstract infinity. So yes, Mbiti used Kiswahili word sasa and zamani to describe the two dimensions of time. And so you might think that Kiswahili has words to describe the future, mustakabali, baadaye, siku za usoni, and so on. So language shows that yes, we do imagine ahead. But Mbiti's claim is about orientation. African thought doesn't dwell on a remote, abstract, speculative future. Instead, it anchors time to seasons, milestones, ceremonies, things that are already in our zamani. So, context matters. Mbiti was a theologian writing about religions. And it's not to say that all African societies think about time in exactly the same way. It's just making a broad philosophical point based on research done mainly in East Africa to open the door and invite us to think differently about how time is lived. Asante kwa kutazama, tafakari hayo, and I'll see you in the next video.
So I'm going to take this time to respond to this video, the uproar over this video, and just some of the foolishness, from the likes of Jared Taylor. So Jared Taylor is one of these white nationalists who tries to promote the idea that Black people did not have civilizations before Europeans. And I presume that Jared Taylor is a Christian or comes from the Christian tradition. And, based upon the Bible that most Westerners, the promoters of Western civilizations, believe in, Black people were the first to establish civilizations. Nimrod himself was a Cushite, a Hamite. The ancient Egyptians, who Jared Taylor and his ilk deny Black. They deny the fact that the ancient Kemites were Black. According to the Bible, they would be the descendants of Ham, and they would be Black, right? The Bible even says that the ancient Kemites came from the south, or Pathros, Nubia. So it's clear that they're, basking in hypocrisy. But this idea that, African people did not plan for the future, this idea that African people did not have a concept of the future, many people are misinterpreting, just the scholarship that this dear sister was trying to bring forth. Within the African context, time is not only, polychronic as opposed to monochronic, meaning that Africans understand time with respect to natural, relationship or natural phenomenon, like the tides of the ocean, the rising and setting of the sun, and just different observational things that they could identify in nature. But time is also cyclical within the African context, as opposed to being simply linear. Now, this is something that is seen throughout the planet with respect to time and with respect to, the historical understanding of time. A lot of people try to act as if, the way that the Western, post-Enlightenment views time today is, universal, but this is only so that they could colonize our understanding of time. As the great, Nana Amos Wilson said, the way that we view time is the way that we materialize our reality, right? And if you understand the different civilizations of the world, whether you're viewing the Dharmic religions in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, they saw time as cyclical, right? So Kalpa, a single day in the life of Brahma, the creator god, would last 4.32 billion human years under certain understandings. And then you have different yugas, which are repeating ages within the Kalpa. And then you have the samsara, which is the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, right? The nature of one's next life is determined by karma, right? The ultimate goal is the achievement of enlightenment or nirvana within this context, right? So these are the dharmic religions. And again, according to Amos Wilson, this is the way that they conceptualize reality with respect to their culture. Now, even if we move forward to some of the Greek and Hellenist philosophers, right? You had the Stoicists, and they believe in the concept of ekipirosis. And this is the great conflagration. They held that the universe is periodically destroyed by fire, then reborn exactly the same, repeating all events and lives ad infinitum. Then you have Pythagoreanism and Orphism, which also taught the doctrines of cosmic cycles and the transmigration of the soul, or reincarnation. And then there's the myth of eternal return. This is found in the works of Plato and others. And this suggests that history and time are not linear progressions, but are destined to repeat themselves in great cycles. You also have the Mayans and the Aztecs, and they're famous for their complex understanding of interlocking cycles. So time is not a line, but a sacred repeating phenomenon made of smaller cycles nested within larger ones. And many of the cultures that are indigenous to the Americas, like the Lakota people and their sacred hoop circles, had an understanding of cyclical time. Ancient Chinese cultures and traditional Chinese thought, right? Even though they had a linear understanding of historiography, their underlying framework was deeply cyclical, right? Their core concept involved the dynamic balance of opposites in yin and yang that govern all phenomena. So this interaction is inherently cyclical. Day turns to night, summer to winter, activity to rest, etc., right? Chinese history is understood through the concept of the mandate of heaven, or Tianming. A dynasty would rule justly, lose its virtue, become corrupt, be overthrown, and be replaced by a new dynasty, starting a cycle anew. You also have the 5 phases, or wuxing, and they're the cycles of interaction in wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, used to explain changes in both the natural world and in human affairs. So again, the idea of a strictly modern Western linear progressive concept of time arose from a combination of Judeo-Christian developed theology, which had a narrative of a definitive beginning in Genesis and an end in Apocalypse or Revelations, Enlightenment idealism, which is the belief in human progress and perfectibility, and then industrial capitalism, which is the commodification of time. Time is money, and the focus on the future should be growth. Now, this is absolutely not universal. And if we look at scholars like Mbiti and other Africana scholars, they directly challenge the notion of the history-prehistory dichotomy within the African context. And they mainly do this because they want to castigate African civilizations for not having the preponderance of writing throughout their civilization, when we know that African culture was predominantly oral, and most of the cultures of the world were predominantly oral. This doesn't mean that they didn't have writing. The letters that we're using themselves within the Latin and the Greek script, and the most prominent, scripts of Eurasia, of Europe and Asia, they descended from the ancient African Medu-Neter system. And Jared Taylor, he should listen to, church fathers like St. Clement of Alexandria, who articulated that all Christians should study the Medu-Neter as a form of ancient wisdom, right? So the letters that we're using today in English and these Indo-European languages, they descend from the African Medu-Neter writing system. So Africans use these writing systems in certain arcane societies, secret societies, societies that were lay societies away from, the public view. They use it in certain administrative documents, certain guilds, right, who had the authority. But within the general dynamics of the society, and Baba Banachi Montgomery has articulated this within his recent interview, the oral testimonies were more dynamic, were more evolutionary with respect to the society, the concrete reality at large, whereas writing scripts are dead. They're not as dynamic, and they don't involve dynamic rigor that we can see within oral testimonies and oral renditions, right? And for those who want to castigate oral data is the foundation of linguistic science. Without living languages, you can't have linguistic analysis. So Africans have always, celebrated the value of the oral narrative and oral nature. Right. So if we specifically look more closely into the work of, Dr. Pierre Umdigi, he highlights that language reflects our beliefs and our connection to the divine, as seen in the French adieu, a single noun from adieu, meaning to Dieu, God, to God, and the English goodbye, a contraction of God be with ye. This connection appears also in the Bible with the Alpha and Omega, symbolizing the beginning and the end. And in the Bassa language of Cameroon, where Ao shares a similar meaning. These parallels between the ancient Kemetic, Bassa, and biblical traditions highlight the enduring influence of theology on language, revealing deep links between existence, culture, and spirituality. Umdigi also explains that in African culture, time is cyclical, encompassing both primordial and historical aspects tied to creation, challenging the false division between history and prehistory. He emphasized Africa's unity and legacy, asserting that infra-Saharan Africa played a significant role in shaping world history long before European colonization. The origin of Kemetic civilization is noted by Verkuter, predate recorded history. Joseph Kizerbo further advocates for history without text, challenging the concept of prehistory and highlighting Africa's rich past. Mbiti emphasizes the vital role of historical linguistics in uncovering Africa's past, showing how language and history are deeply intertwined. He draws parallels between Paleo-African traditions and certain Greek epics, both shaped by cultural exchange and united in their celebration of timeless gods and heroes as a foundation of identity. By preserving tradition and meaning while evolving over time, language serves as a powerful link between the society's past and its future. And if we analyze some of the linguistic data here, you can clearly see a Paleo-African link between the ways that the ancient Kemites, describe the future, and the way that the Copts describe the future, and the way that many, inter-African languages describe the future. Odi and Ihu in Igbo, what is in front? Dakye in Akan, day, morning yet to break, the time ahead. Nangaba in Hausa, there ahead, that which is in front. Ojo Iwaju, which is the ahead, front, as a metaphor, or tomorrow, future. Dina plus, the future verb, which is the Wolof conjugation. And this again is a reference to that which is ahead, and on and on and on. We can see a clear link between the way that these different inter-African populations describe the future, or that which is ahead in the cycle, and the way that the ancient Pharaonic language, as well as its descendant in Coptic, defined the future as that which is ahead in the cycle, in a process, a concrete process that is connected to nature and is connected to the natural cycles that we can observe. This is clear within African culture. So Mbiti highlights the Janus figure as a symbol of this type of transition, with his name Janua, which means door, emphasizing his role in overseeing spatial, temporal, and ontological changes. This dual-faced symbol appears in Roman mythology, Bamun art, Basa sculptures, and the Kemetic Necher Aker, depicted as two lions facing opposite directions. These motifs reflect the cyclical nature of time and afterlife, bridging African, Roman, and even Mesopotamian and Abrahamic traditions. And this is underscoring a shared understanding of transitions and the eternal nature of existence. And it is most likely that these traditions spread from ancient Africa into Western Asia, because we do know that many of these Abrahamic traditions used African philosophies to be able to build their theology. This is very present. This is very, very factual. It's obvious. So Mbiti highlights how African cosmology views time as cyclical, reflected in the languages like Basa and Mbochi, where words like Yani and Yanam mean both yesterday and tomorrow. This duality is reflected in African symbols like the Balum two-headed lepers and the Bamum Nuepetu, the two-headed snake, representing continuity between past and future. In Kiswahili, Zamani encompasses both ancient and modern times. Mbiti emphasizes that African cosmology challenges linear historical views, portraying time as interconnected and evolving. So when he looked at the Kapsiki people of northern Cameroon, he saw that they viewed time as a dynamic balance between tradition and change, and they used the term Zamani to describe the present. This challenges, again, the rigid distinctions between the prehistoric and historic time, critiquing views by scholars like Mbiti. Thinkers like Ndebibia and Kagame emphasize that African thought embraces a continuous, evolving flow of time, rejecting Western linear views of past, present, and future. So the African didn't dichotomize these things. They connected them holistically. They united the different aspects of time to be continuous and ever evolving. This is African culture. So according to Mbiti, African cosmology sees time as a primordial force from God, Manala's egg, which Ndebibia describes as God's eldest son, transcending life and death. Primordial time represents balance before the revolution that began historical time, which reflects events and conflicts. Mythical time, seen as happy destiny, aligns with the dual symbolism of Janus and Aker. In chapter 17 of the Runu Perdum Haru, two lions back-to-back symbolize omniscience and time's duality, with the horizon Aket above signifying eternal continuity. The text, I am yesterday and I know tomorrow, reflects divine wisdom uniting past and future, resonating with Paleo-African views on time and being. So, to illustrate this, we clearly know that, the Paleo-African is the pre-dialectical ancestor of the majority of the languages on the African continent, save the Khoi and San languages as well as the Amazi in northern Africa. So Umdigi highlights linguistic and cultural links in Bassa dialects. In Bogwe and Keleng, cave is Benben, echoing the ancient Kemetic sacred stone Benben, while stone is Mbole, a term shared across dialects. In Yambat, cave is Ntan, and in Dog Bikim, Ngok means both stone and cave, tying to Ngok Lituba, drilled rock, symbolizing creation and shelter. The Bassa people's sacred traditions parallel Kemet's Benben stone, a symbol of pyramid peaks, with phonetic forms like BLBL, BRBR, where the N hieroglyph may suggest R or L. Cross-language comparisons show similar terms for stone that cut across Greenbergian boundaries. You can see Bella and Amodic, Tamazic with Ablal, Maban, so-called Nilo-Saharan, Bieli, Chadic, Bella, and Zarpal, and so-called Bantu with Ibade and Libara. So these links, alongside Libyan petroglyphs and Basal traditions, underscore stones and caves as sacred spaces in African cosmologies tied to creation and life. Umdigi explains that the Kemetic word Geb, represented by the goose, refers to both the earth and the earth netcher Geb in the Medu netcher. Sayce noted that the Geb goose had the phonetic value G in Meroitic. In Bassa, Gobakoba, the guinea fowl, mirrors Gib Gib, the god who flies, from the coffin text, linking Geb's earth symbolism to bird imagery. Linguistic parallels are also found in Northern Omodic, Boro, Gob for earth, and in Beja, Guap for flat ground. Eastern Cushitic, Gabi, earth, Guva, plains, share terms like Gob, chicken, Hikoa, mountain, Dam, sandal, Ton, horn, Bep, Ram, goat, Sahal, to put a fence, and Mut, Baongi, nightingale, highlight linguistic ties between Bassa and Meroitic Nubia. So Umdiki also showed that the Bassa people of Cameroon constructed furnaces using baked bricks, a method similar to Meroitic techniques, with comparable examples among Togo's Bassari, suggesting regional cultural ties. Lions, or Panthera leo, hold deep cultural and religious significance in both Bassa and Meroitic societies. In Meroe and Musarat, lions guarded temples, while the Bassa identify as Lugbanga from the feline family, and dedicated their institution Nge or Nje to the lion Mbogkot Bisek. The Meroitic lion god Epidemic parallels deities symbolizing time and duality, like Janus, Aker, and Yahweh as the Alpha and Omega, reflecting the Paleo-African view of time as cyclical and all-encompassing. So Umdigi also found relationships between Ankh and Onk, meaning life, and this forms a key linguistic cultural link between Metrem and Kimi and Bassa. The name of the Kushite king Pianki, meaning the living, and its Meroitic equivalent Pei, both derive from this same concept, with Pei meaning life. In Bassa, the verb Pei means to have life saved or to escape death, further connecting these African traditions where life is central to both naming and cultural expression. This demonstrates the continuity between Kemetic, Kushite, and Bassa languages, highlighting life as a core cultural and spiritual principle. So finally, for Pierre Umdigi, Dr. Pierre Umdigi, the term Kandake refers to queens of the Kushite Empire and reflects titles such as Sat Re, daughter of Re, and Nisut Bidi, queen of Upper and Lower Kemet. In Acts 8:27 of the Bible, a Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, interacts with Philip. The Bassa language has a similar term, Kindak, meaning a royal figure. The classical Napadan era Kandake means king's wife, and aligns with the Bassa Kindak, a powerful and royal figure, sometimes head of the harem. As Njami Nwande explained, a Kindak or Nyan Mbai denotes the queen or mother of the Mbai, reflecting a shared cultural heritage and royal function across African monarchies. So as we can see, not only is there a relation between the way that African people define time, but even with respect to the way that we constructed our civilization with these notions of cyclical time and in these cyclical periods, right? The as above, so below type of relationship. And again, when it comes to the calendar system itself, Europeans got the 365-day calendar from Black people in ancient Kemet, right? It took Black people from Africa to civilize them and show them the true understanding of how to run a civilization based upon a holistic understanding of time. And if not for the Enlightenment and these different periods of rationalism, in the West, time would be cyclical as it was through the majority of the civilized populations, civilized societies of the planet, right? Dr. John Henry Clarke told us that Europeans never built a civilization because the operative word in civilization is civil. And from this data that we have seen before us and these different commentaries, it is clear that these particular Yurugu, these particular Wignats have never been civil. So with that, that's all I got for this. I'm gonna catch you on the next one. Peace.
True as gold, a comma green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirates' lines, we break the bondage tight. Kanji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Big drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kanji verse.